Thank you for joining me on this tutorial. We are using the picture reference you see on your left from Pinterest, which I have converted to black and white so it will be easier for us to follow with the value changes. Let's begin drawing the cranium structure, which is a sphere, and we find the brow line and the center of the face by drawing a horizontal line across the equator and the vertical line that drapes from the top of the sphere. Where these two lines meet is the center of the face. Draw another line under the equator line to indicate the level of the eyes. And now I determine the relative positions of the nose and the bottom of the chin by measuring the length between the hairline and the equator line. I'm drawing very lightly with my grade B pencil because most of these lines will be erased or changed. We are at the beginning stage of the construction of the face and head, so all things are subject to change. I start drawing the facial features from the center of the face with the eyebrows and the eyes, and then I drop in lines for the nose from the center of the face as well. And at the same time, I'm constantly comparing my drawing to the reference photo. I draw the eye that is closer to the center of the face first. But I avoid drawing in any details. At this stage, I'm just trying to get the size, shape, width, and height of these facial features roughly correct. The mouth is about a third to half the distance from the bottom of the nose to the bottom of the chin. From the reference photo, I can see that her mouth has a very interesting and distinctive shape, and I would like to capture that. I try not to think that I'm drawing lips, but rather I'm drawing shapes. And this can be applied to drawing any facial features or even the shapes or the forms of the head and torso. I'm blocking in some lines of the other features of this portrait, basically the outer edges of the hair and the neck and a little bit of her shoulder and arm. So you're already getting a bonus in this tutorial because we're not just drawing a realistic face, but also a face in context of a portrait including her hair, shoulder, and outfit. Okay, I'm drawing the outlines of her hair very lightly. You don't want a harsh outline for the hairline because the hair is very soft. I'm drawing in the irises of the eye and a few more slight details. For example, the inside her upper eyelid, there's a distinct shape that is lighter. I do the same thing for the eye that is farther from the center of the face, but is closer to us. I begin the nose at the center of the face between the eyebrows and the eyes. I don't have a hack for drawing the nose, but simple lines for the nose bridge, the sides of the nose, and the nostrils. I just erased the first construction lines for the mouth and changed it so that it looks a little closer to the reference photo. Adjusting and redrawing the jawline, the neck, and even her shirt. The construction stage is the most important stage of the drawing for me, and I don't mind spending more time at this stage to erase and redraw any of the facial or portrait features. When the structure is ready, I erase any and all of the construction lines that may get in the way of my shading. When I start shading in the values of this face and portrait, I usually start with the darkest areas first. And in the reference photo, it's her dark hair. I'm using the side of my 5B graphite pencil to shade in the darkest values first, and more or less shading in the same direction as the flow of her hair. But I don't draw every strand of her hair. Although her hair is very dark, it is not the same dark. There are variations in the dark areas too. Take extra care when you're drawing around the contour of the face, especially when you are using a softer and darker graphite pencil like a grade 5B. There's a striking contrast of the values between the very dark hair and her fairly light skin tone. So I'm making the hair closest to the contour of her face much darker than the hair at the edges. We want to make sure that the hair has volume, so the hair is usually higher, slightly higher than the original top of the cranial lines. And again, I'm using the side of my grade B pencil to really shade in the hair very quickly. Next to the hair, her shirt also is pretty dark even though there are patterns on it. I'm ignoring the pattern and simply shading in some dark values. Now that I'm done blocking in the darkest areas of this portrait, I go in with my 1B graphite pencil and start shading in the darkest areas among the skin tones. In the reference photo, it's the neck area and especially also the area between the neck and the jawline, where the neck receives some cast shadow from, I think, both the contour of the head and the hair. We're working on the medium to light areas of the face, so I'm careful to draw very lightly with my B graphite pencil. I'm holding the pencil very far from the tip, so this allows my hand to relax when I'm shading. Keep looking back and forth between the reference photo on the left and the drawing on your paper. Please click the like or thumbs up button and consider subscribing to my channel. Your support means I can continue to make quality tutorials like this. Thank you so much for your support. After shading the lighter dark areas on the face, I go back to shade the much darker skin areas under the chin and jawline. And this is why it's a good idea to start drawing from the darker areas to the lighter areas. Because if you begin by drawing in the lighter areas, every other areas that are darker will need to be darkened. And soon you will run out of the darkest values you can use. Okay, I am emphasizing the shadows in the 5 areas that are typically darker under normal light conditions. That is in the eye socket, under her nose, under her upper lip and lower lip, and under her chin. However, I can see from the reference photo that the light source is not strong because even the cast shadow on her neck under the chin is not very distinct. This kind of light source makes it look like there are a lot of shadows on the face. So it's a good thing that we started shading from the darkest parts of the portrait, basically the hair. So I can go in and shade the areas on the face that are much lighter compared to the hair and even to the neck area. So looking at the reference photo, I can capture the areas that are more shaded compared to the highlighted areas. My goal, however, is not to be a copy machine and draw exactly as what I see, because I would need a whole lot more time to just do the construction of the face. So you should also set realistic goals for yourself and see this drawing process as a learning process. I learned from experience that I draw better when I'm more relaxed and am having fun. Okay, I'm drawing and shading the darkest values on her face, which include these 2 eyes and the eyebrows. There's some darker shadow areas on the left eye, or the eye left to us. And I don't want to draw an outline of the nose bridge from this angle, but I shaded in the left side of her cheek a little darker. This way I can enhance the highlight on the top of her nose bridge later. And now I'm shading in her mouth, which is also one of the darkest areas of her facial features. Checking the values with the rest of the facial features and also with the rest of the portrait. For the nose, there seems to be patterns of highlight, some shadow, and another line of highlight, and another area of shadow. I'm drawing very quickly, but please look at the reference photo and consider these things before you start drawing them in. And quite honestly, I'm not drawing this fast. I had to speed up this video so it will fit under 20 minutes. So feel free to pause, slow down this video, or pause and stop and go back to the sections that you want to rewatch. The transitions along the cheek of her face to her mouth to under her mouth are very, very subtle, and so the shadows are very subtle too. I try to use the lightest pressure to control my shading from feather light almost just touching the paper pressure to slightly heavier pressure for heavier, darker values. By adjusting the pressure that I use and also where I hold the pencil, I can create a big variety of values from simply just lighter than the white to even the darkest shade you can see. From the reference photo, I see that the lightest values or the brightest spots are probably the spots in her irises. So I'm keeping these reflected spots of light in her irises untouched with my pencil mark. But most of the other facial areas will have some form of shading because relative to the brightest spots in the irises, they're still darker. If you are a beginning art student or portrait drawing is new for you, please set realistic goals and take each drawing lesson as a preparation for your next drawing. Because there's no such thing as drawing superheroes, and no one can do something perfectly the first time they do it. I know I didn't, so take that pressure off yourself for trying to be perfect or draw perfectly. And I'm able to draw this portrait or face because of years of practice. And I try to see this drawing process as a way for me to get better in my next drawing or painting. Okay, I think I'm mostly done with the shadows on the face, so I need to go in and intensify or darken the shadows on her neck. Now I'm working on the shoulder and the upper arm area where it occupies quite a bit of real estate in this portrait. So I need to go in and add in some shadows so there's a sense of skin tone, mass, and volume. I look at the reference photo and start shading in the areas that are slightly shadowed. But I need to take care that I don't do too much work because if I do too much work in the arm and shoulder area, it may steal the attention away from the center of the face, which is the focal point of this whole portrait. And I want to keep the viewer's eyes in the focal point or the focal areas of this portrait. I'm using my 5B pencil to work on the darker values of the eyes and eyebrows. I want to emphasize the darkest areas of the eye in the right. I'm holding the pencil closer to the tip and pressing down with a lot more pressure. And I'm doing the same for the eye that is farther from us. I try to be very careful, even now, because the eyes are always softer than we think. And now her hair seems too light in comparison to her eyes. So I'm going in to do a second round of darkening the whole portrait. I'm going in to shade the darkest areas even darker and preserving the highlights. At the same time, I'm maintaining the same value relationships that I see from the reference photo. By shading the dark areas even darker, I am creating the widest range of values that is possible through my graphite pencils. And this wide range of values will help enhance my portrait, increasing the depth and dimensionality, which are essential to the creation of realism on paper. So now we're going into the final phase of the drawing. I call it the tweaking stage. Basically, I add in anything that will help enhance my portrait, and I may even remove some elements that will distract the viewer from the center of the portrait. Okay, don't draw every strand of hair. The recommendation is to draw the hair in clumps. I see different areas of the hair from the reference photo. This section closest to the jaw is a little darker than the outer section of the hair. I try to keep the outer contours of the hair very light and soft. The reason is I don't want the contours of the hair, even though the hair can get very dark, to distract the viewer from the center of the attention. The nostrils can get very dark, but I keep the shadows around them softer and lighter. I don't have a hack for drawing the nose, but I simply draw what I see. I guess you can say my hack for drawing comes from increasing my power of observation. For years, I drew after photos and pictures online in magazines and some live models. And I highly recommend that you do the same, and especially if you have access to live models.